Hello and welcome to the Everyone Has a Story podcast. Today we're going to be talking about motivation. What is motivation? Now, I know that when I'm hungry, I'm going to go get something to eat. I'm motivated to eat. If I'm thirsty, I'm going to get something to drink. But what does it look like with motivation when it comes to our professional careers, our professional way of doing things, and our businesses? And that's what we're going to talk about today. But before that, let me tell you a story that I just got to encounter here over the last couple of weeks. Here in Gig Harbor, we have a Dairy Queen. It's a fast food place that's known for their ice cream. And in the summertime, after each youth sports team gets done playing, usually their coach and parents takes them to the local Dairy Queen, and they get to have that little bit of ice cream and celebrate their whatever, hopefully their victory. So the other day, I'm at the Dairy Queen with my great nephew. We weren't enjoying sports. We were enjoying our ice cream. And about that time, the door opens up and probably 10, maybe 15 little girls, probably somewhere between 9 and 10, maybe 11, come running in, and they were hooting and hollering. They were having the best time of their life, like they had just won the Super Bowl. They're all in their Little League Little League uniforms. So everything was just good. So as the last kid came walking in, here comes the coach. So I leaned over to the coach and I said, "Hey, congratulations." And he looked at me and says, "What for?" And I said, "Well, it looks like your team just won the World Series." He goes, "No, actually, we lost." And I'm looking at him and saying, "No, wait a minute. These little girls are hooting and hollering. They're celebrating like they just won the World Championship. And you tell me they lost?" He goes, "Actually, we got beat pretty bad." I go, "Wow, they sure don't look like they just got beat pretty bad." He says, "Well, it's kind of interesting. At the end of each game, we talk about what we did good and what we did bad, and what we needed to work on. In this particular game, obviously not too many things went good. So he said, I pointed out to each person what they just learned from this game and what they're going to do to make it better the next time they play." And he said he specifically earmarked every child and told them what they just learned and how good they should feel, because maybe the scoreboard did not reflect the win, but their attitude does, and their attitude towards learning and getting better. And at each one, he said they raised their hands and they were all just high-fiving each other like, "Yeah, we won. We just learned so much for our life in the long term of our life." And so I said, "Well, congratulations on that." And he walked away and thanked me. And about that time, he turned back around, he came back, he said, "You know what? I've never, ever had anybody congratulate me on a loss and how I coach the kids." And so today, we're going to talk about that, because in life, especially in the business community, it appears that we are missing a lot of motivation. There's a great resignation going on, and everybody's talking about how bad the work environment is. And so sooner or later, it comes down to, is the owner of that business a motivating factor or demotivating factor? Is the leader, the manager, a motivating factor or demotivating factor? And that's what we're going to talk about today with my guest. So let me now introduce Diana Zelvin. Diana, how are you?
I'm great, Roger. How are you?
Good. Diana and I, we met each other close to 20 years ago at a fitness conference. And for about 2 or 3 years after that, we met up every year at the conference. We'd say hi. We'd see each other either in a class or on the showroom floor and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, we didn't see each other ever again. And then just recently, I had a friend send me a post that she really, really enjoyed. I look at the post and I look at the author, and it's Diana. So just by chance, I reach out to Diana, and it's the same Diana I knew back 15, 20 years ago. And ever since then, we've now been talking about business, leadership, and just strategies. And I have to tell you, back then when she was trying to open up her first health club, she was lacking a lot of maybe business sense, but she had the motivation to keep learning everything that she didn't know at that time to make better and better and better decisions. And I always admired that. And then, 15, 20 years later, you know what? It's the same person, but now she's learned a lot, and I'm learning more from her than I think I ever thought I could ever tell her. So Diana, thank you for coming back into my professional life again. Welcome. And why don't you give the audience a little bit more in depth of what you do and why you do it that way?
Sure. Well, thanks, Roger. It's just a joy and a pleasure to reconnect after all these years. And what I do, well, even when I was doing the health club, even before that, I've been a psychotherapist for 25 years. And I did some nutrition counseling, which came out of some health problems. And I ended up doing that in a health club while I was starting my practice early on. And in my neighborhood, I saw that they could use, it was going to pop and they could use a health club. So I did spend 4 to 5 years learning a lot. I will correct you a little, Roger. I think I did learn business sense even then, although I definitely have learned a lot more since, but I didn't know anything in the beginning. And then I learned a lot. But I did have blind spots for sure that now the look back, I know what I would counsel myself on. And then I had a child and before I got too old and I was 44 and I couldn't keep trying to raise money and make the health club work. And I was just trying to figure out how to raise babies. So it all kind of fell apart, sadly, at the time. But not really sadly, because then the recession hit and who knows, God knows what would have happened with the health club startup. And then, I just focused back on my practice for a while. I got into coaching. And because what I like about coaching is kind of the forward thinking. I do like motivating people. And, as a therapist, you're not supposed to advise so much, in coaching too, you want to pull out from within, but I like the combination. And as a coach, what makes me distinctly maybe unique is I really like to get and good at getting to the root of people's blind spots and to help them where they're most stuck. And if you don't do the deep work, you're destined to repeat, your same patterns. And, after I was doing that for a while, as my son got a little older, he started school and I ended up with my nutrition background. I thought, oh yeah, I'll help you. The school, it's a public school in Brooklyn. They wanted to build a rooftop garden. And I ended up spearheading this large $2 million project, which is a rooftop greenhouse classroom with hydroponic systems. And that led me to thinking, wow, I'm really kind of good at this, whatever this was. And that ended up being building relationships, galvanizing people around causes. And I ended up working for that nonprofit, New York Sunworks, and they're in 200 schools now in New York City. And a bunch of other nonprofits doing fundraising. And I like being out in the world. So it was a nice balance to my practice. And then the pandemic hit. And I have really honed in and focused on helping people, leaders through this time, employees through this time. I've given a lot of talks on tools and strategies. And now I am super focused on helping leaders be better leaders, because in the course of all that experience, I always would work with the leaders of whether it was in the health club industry. I learned a lot. They became my mentors, whether it was in business world, and whether it's the nonprofits. I worked with the executive directors and development directors, and elected officials, and so I really love helping people look at their blind spots. And boy, I'm excited about this topic of motivation because I got a lot to say about it.
I know you are, and I know you do. And it's all good stuff that you want to say. So let's talk about motivation so that everybody's on the same page. What is your definition of motivation?
My definition, it's not that much different than when you look up in the dictionary, right? It's all the things that drive people to do things. Motivation is what drives all behavior. So even if you brush your teeth every morning, there's some motivation to have clean teeth. But people don't necessarily think about it. They think about it's only a habit, but there's really got to be some motivation behind it. I will say, in my thinking about motivation, I feel like you can't talk about motivating others, because whether you're talking about your own motivation is one thing, but because only you can motivate you. And actually, I'm going to break that down a little bit. A lot of my clients just say, well, I'm not feeling motivated. Someone today said, I don't have the fire. She just started working with me. That's because motivation doesn't hit us. We either have to generate it ourselves, and you have to do the things for yourself that make you excited about something and want to do it, even the hard things. Or two, if we're talking about motivating others, like leaders motivating teams and employees, then we really need to talk about two important things: empathy and intrinsic motivation. So where do you want me to start?
Well, we're gonna get to those two in a second.
Okay.
But I know that you've been described by a lot of your colleagues and friends as that gentle persuader. So what is the difference between gentle persuading and motivation?
Oh, they mean that more like I'm persistent if I'm excited about something, if I want to meet someone that I think we could help each other. I don't know, that sounds a little almost icky, persuading, but I would say that I motivate people, one, through modeling, but two, through the three parts we're going to break down on intrinsic motivation that I maybe didn't have the verbiage before I've really been studying it. But I might have gotten far afield of your question.
No, I just that, a lot of times business owners, team leaders, they seem to be good at persuading, but there's not a whole lot of motivation behind it. And so really, I just want to make sure that everybody out there in the audience really understands the difference between the two.
Oh yeah, I think when it pertains to me, it's just I'm good at building relationships, and I'm passionate when I'm behind a cause, a project, or something I'm working on. So I think I'm good at galvanizing people onto what I like, and that can be motivating because I do like, when I'm working one-on-one, I do like to highlight my coaching client, a leader, really pinpoint what they're good at so we can really leverage what they're good at. What leaders need to do for their employees is kind of do the same thing. So I would move away from the persuading language. It's just something someone had said to me. I would say I'm good at getting in the room and building relationships. And I do like teaching people how to do that because they are afraid to do that. But in terms of motivating people, most businesses either are not aware of the science or ignore the science. So I'm going to talk about this guy, Dan Pink, who wrote this book, Drive. And he studied, it's called The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And there's just tons and tons of research on what does and doesn't motivate us. And it was very aligned with an educator that has written about 20 books, Alfie Kohn, that I love his books, talk about the same exact thing. And they do it in education and they do it in companies, and schools could learn a lot and businesses could learn even more about what does and doesn't motivate. So the traditional way of motivation that business owners ignore is not working, or they don't know it's not working, is, carrots and sticks or external rewards, incentivize. Let's pay people more. We'll give them bonuses. You get commission. And, what Dan Pink found out in all his research, and some of it was financed by the Federal Reserve Bank and done at MIT. Okay, so we're not talking like slouchy research, but that it actually demotivates people. Because one, when you take away the reward, you haven't built in intrinsic motivation, which is what we're going to talk about. But it also, then people are focused on the money and they're not freed up to focus on innovation. And what they found about external rewards is it dampens creativity, and then it shuts down innovation and problem solving. So it's like school. You can do well and get A's, you work hard, or you're someone who's good at school. But the kids who get B's and C's doesn't mean they're not smart or have talents or strengths, but over time, they're being punished by getting these lower grades. And now they're a kid who's not good in school. And the same happens at work, right? You reward the people that do well, and employers think, oh, positive reinforcement. We're giving them more money. We're reinforcing them to do more of the same. But actually, when left to their own devices, people work harder, not based on rewards. So, I would say, we have to talk about intrinsic motivation, because intrinsic motivation. So when you say, what is my definition of motivation? Motivation is both extrinsic motivation and intrinsic. And extrinsic is external. You do that. If you do this, you get that, right? It's transactional. Intrinsic motivation is a person's desire to do something because they like it. Now it's not quite that simple, but it kind of is that, well, they like it, they enjoy it. But when it's broken down, there's three fundamental parts, ingredients that are needed for intrinsic motivation. The first one is autonomy. And, what that means is the person has independence to work on something and the freedom. So, for example, Dan Pink talks about in his book, or maybe one of his talks I listened to, Google. Google gives or gave, I don't know if they still do it, 20% of their employees' time can be spent on projects independently. And they get a choice and freedom in one of four ways, whether through freedom of the task, the team they choose, the technique, and the I forgot what the fourth one is. Must not be as important, but time and the time. So they found that in the 20% of their time, that 50%, that half of their most successful products come out of that 20%. So, and there's another company in Australia that was a software company that said, well, we're going to do 24-hour autonomy time, whatever they call it. And they gave their employees, they said, you have 24 hours, do whatever you want. The only thing we ask is you got to show us the results. They found that in their 24-hour autonomy time, I'm just going to call it, that they discovered that the engineers, it was their engineers, discovered more solutions, more creative solutions that grew their business more than anything. So autonomy is really crucial. The second ingredient for intrinsic motivation is mastery. People need to feel like they are growing and learning and being impactful. So Dan Pink calls it the Goldilocks, giving them a Goldilocks task. Goldilocks meaning it's not too hard and not too soft, right? So something where you stretch them so they're growing and they feel a sense of mastery, but not something too easy where they don't have motivation, right? So mastery. And then the third one is very important, is purpose. That people need to feel that what they do matters. And the company needs to articulate and communicate that often so that they know clearly that what they do is a value, and they have to live it too in the job. So it's not just like a one and done and you tell them. So that's kind of an overview of the ingredients for intrinsic motivation, which,
Is it?
so
Go
good.
ahead. No, go ahead.
It's tied to, I'm going to tie it to empathy, because being empathic is being interested, being curious, understanding what the other one's perspective is, also what they need. So you're being empathic if you're thinking about what your employees need. And if you can hone in on these three ingredients, and it's different for everybody, right? But we're going to talk later a little bit about an empathy ecosystem and how you implement that, and why I think empathy is not only the key to motivation, but I think it's a superpower to improve a business's bottom line, especially in these times.
So is it safe to say that intrinsic motivation has to do a lot with the passion level?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And how do you inspire passion in your employees, right? Because Roger, you have the same thing that I have. Have business owners. I have coaching clients who are business owners. And, some of them, we hear it. People are complaining. They're complaining about the employees. They're lazy. They're not motivated. Some millennials. And instead of looking at what is their role as the business owner, what could they be doing to motivate the employees? Is it partially hiring? I know, I've heard, there just aren't good employees out there. Or is it that you're not giving them what they need so they can feel successful? I have one business owner who has a food business, and he spent time training his porter, a guy who others would have written off, a guy who had been homeless, who'd been incarcerated, and they've been through a myriad of porters. He spent time training the porter. The business owner felt so proud and about that he helped this guy and give him the tools. And it's the other thing I want to get to too, what leaders need to give their employees so they can be successful. Besides those three things I mentioned, he gave him, the tools and the support and the reflection of the job this man was doing. So it can be even on that level. And this guy's stuck around for a long time now. So,
I just love those kind of stories, that an owner saw something in someone and took a risk. And that really does show the empathy towards people. And I know that's missing. I know we've had a lot of conversations regarding that, what's really missing. So let's take it to the workplace. And you've got that empathy ecosystem that you've mentioned earlier. Where are the businesses falling short, and where could this empathy ecosystem really be a good solution?
So I think that businesses are really too focused on the metrics. Now, this is going to sound counterintuitive. Of course, we have to focus on the metrics, of course. But, I'm working with a very large company. I'm helping some teams of their employees with some tools and strategies. And that's another way to help your employees, is bring in outside help, professionals who can help the employees with what they need for their overall well-being and mindset, so they can feel excited about the work that they have to do if the higher ups are not doing it, doing the positive, the empathic motivation. But where they're falling short is that if you're just focusing on the metrics, then you're looking at the old model of behaviorism back from the 1940s, when it's like similar to teaching. Managing is about controlling people. It's about compliance. It's about getting people to do stuff. And no one likes to be controlled, number one. It's not being tuned into what they really need. And if you focus more on how can I help them and what can I do and how can I engage them and have them be excited instead of how can I get them to do stuff, right? It's a different way of looking at it. And it's, it's really teaching business owners two things. One, educating on what is empathy. So here's an interesting research that was done with like 150 CEOs by a well-known business organization. And they asked them if they thought empathy was important. 90% said absolutely. Empathy is like one of the most important things. Then we went back to the employees of the same companies. And first the employees said, I would work longer hours if I felt it was an empathic workplace. Like they would not care. They would work hard and work long hours. But when they asked them if they felt their workplace was empathic, 87% said absolutely not, that they don't feel appreciated. So there's a disconnect, right, between what the CEOs think they're doing and what is actually happening. So you need education on what is empathy and then a strategy and how would you implement empathy ecosystem culture. What would that look like and how you really do it. It's not like, it's just like exercise, right? You wouldn't build a muscle and then you built your muscles and you never need to exercise anymore, right? You need to do it all the time in perpetuity to build the culture and to live your values if the CEOs say that is their value.
So how would you help a business owner, a team leader, an executive launch an empathy ecosystem to their practice, to their daily processes, to the team?
So, it depends on the size of the company, but the kind of doesn't matter. We can always scale it, but you want to start with a schedule of, okay, when are your person-to-person contacts? When are your individual meetings and when are their team meetings? And then once you have, when the meetings are that you can focus on this piece, that can be easily systematized. And then, then to really dig into what happens during the meeting, whether the one-on-one or the, I would say both. And also maybe assessments. I would put it, say, having the employees assess, right? Getting feedback, because so first the employer has to create a safe space, and the employees need to feel there's not going to be retribution for feedback. I'll get to stories, but so just what it would look like. So let's say we start with the meetings, and then, in the meeting, you want to be curious about them. You want to ask how they're doing. You want to ask open-ended questions. So open-ended questions are not like, how are you doing? Fine. That's just, you can give one-word answers. How is work going? Good. You want to ask questions that really get them to open up and unpack. What's been hard about this time? What do they like about the way the goals of the company? How do they feel do they feel they're getting support in their job? What do they need? I mean, that's always a big one. What do they need to be more impactful? Actually, maybe I will insert a couple of stories. I have a lot of disgruntled, some of my therapy patients here their employees. And one does speak up. One is to talk to the CEO of her company, and he's moving here to New York from Australia, and says things will change. But in the meantime, the principals at her company here, she feels alone. She's got no support. She gives them feedback. They don't do anything with it. So that's part of the empathy ecosystem. You have to have follow-up, right? So when you're asking these questions, you want to be curious about them. Don't go in with assumptions that you think you know how they feel. The big company I work, this one I mentioned, they had 7,000 employees. Now they have 14. Now they lost 1,400. They lost 1,400. So people are feeling more burdened than ever. And they had surveyed them before the big loss, and they did feel, the number one thing was they felt unappreciated. So don't assume as an employer that you do know how people feel, because you really don't. So one, it's be curious. Two is invite them into feedback and invite them into the conversation about the company. I really think it's very similar to being a parent. Instead of like trying to control your kid and get them to do their homework, get them to clean their room, you want to say, well, what are your ideas? Just like in business, what are your ideas? Because you may be really surprised. They may have some good ideas. And then they feel what they does matter, right? That they feel heard. The most important thing is people need to feel seen, heard, and understood. These are fundamental needs that we have. So you have to really somehow make sure they understand that you are going to, you're not going to not only have consequences for feedback, which might seem negative, but also another way to teach and be part of this empathy ecosystem culture is the simple reflecting back what someone says without judgment or opinion. Just kind of repeating back what you heard. So you're saying, Roger, that you want to understand how to implement an empathy ecosystem culture. Like, what would I do? Right. So, they're like, oh, okay, she's listening. He's listening to me. Then you have to normalize, you have to normalize this time. You have to let them know you see them, that this is a really hard time. And that has to be, that you see that it's been hard working from home or whatever they're doing that you notice. But you have to normalize it so they don't feel uncomfortable, because one of the positive things of the pandemic is it has made mental health part of the conversation and our well-being part of the conversation. So these topics are not so taboo anymore, hopefully. I mentioned inviting collaboration, and what would get them excited about their job? Ask them, and I'd be interested to hear what they say. And then you have to have concrete follow through. So then you need like a system of, now you have, as the leader, you have to show up, and maybe you ask them, what could that be? But that you want to have this systematized weekly, monthly, quarterly. And then you need to ask yourself, what did you, as a leader, what did you learn that you didn't know before? Other things, I always have tons of ideas of what the leader could do, but they can use stories from their own life of things that have helped them, and they could be a model and show the pandemic has also opened up people to our homes and their pets and our kids and pajamas. And so I think it's cool, and it's okay to say, well, this is what I struggle with, but this is what I'm doing to work on it. And the other thing I would say is, maybe you need to bring in some outside different types of advisors depending on what they're really struggling with if you don't have it in-house. Maybe I would start there.
So you mentioned 87% of the feedback from the employees was that they did not feel that they worked in an empathetic environment. 80 to 82% of all small businesses in medium-sized businesses fail within the first 2 to 4 years. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with, obviously, the business owners and managers probably were not well prepared to be a business owner, number one. But then number two is they don't know how to build that team and keep that team nourished. And so what is the main motivating factor on why business owners and leaders fail to collaborate with their staff as opposed to just dictate to the staff?
I guess I'm going to use myself as an example. When I was working on the health club, I did build a great team around me of really, they're all really successful then and now, that I couldn't even afford. But I think they were motivated to join because it was fun, it was exciting. It was different than what as a woman, as a therapist, I felt I had insight about motivation and what would get people to the gym. Because as you and I talked about, 80% of health club members don't use it. So I thought, well, if I can understand, if gyms keeps trying to sell the equipment and they don't know what's not motivating people to get there, then you're stuck there. But so how do you get off on the right foot in terms of building a team so that you're more successful? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes. Why doesn't an owner ask for help from their staff? They seem to be just a dictator as opposed to asking and building the team around collaboration.
Right. Okay. Well, I think for one, that's a leader who maybe one doesn't know you need to build the skill of empathy. Now, there are people that will never be able to build it. There are. I mean, if you're really, I'm going to use some clinical, nothing a surprising term, but like a narcissistic personality where only you know best, and you're never open to outside views, it's going to be hard to help that person to be open-minded to build empathy. And empathy involves collaboration and engagement, and dictating goes back to, I need to get you to do stuff and you need to do it my way. So I guess it's one, you have to know, is this person, are they workable? And if it's yourself listening, you could say, maybe I am open. I'm open to learning more. You have to have a curious mind to other opinions. And, there's a ton of business books on leadership that they all say, to show what you don't know is a sign of a great leader. And great leaders hire and build people that know all the things they don't, and surround themselves with a circle of people who know the things that they don't know. Now, if you're not that person, it is going to be a dictatorial business is not going to run well. So I don't think across the board we can help everyone. But the people who say, but I'm a caring person and I don't know, I'm really struggling here. I think I'll give you a story. I have a business owner. She's very lovely, very empathic. She's been in business 20 years, already before I met her. She never made a profit. She has 3 locations. It's a food business. And she's complaining about her employees, and they're lazy. They're not motivated. It's this generation. But so here's where she's really hard on herself and works and expects the same. And actually, I was just talking with someone else who's an HR head of HR in a startup run. She's my age, my friend, but the startup is run by 20 somethings. It's in the fitness field, and their ethic is we work like crazy. And they expect that of their employees. And my friend, the HR head, she's like, how do I show them they're going to burn out these people? And, it's not going to help the business. And, partly they do have to learn. I think they could be educated. I think it could be, inexperience, like you're talking about. They could be educated about thinking about things in a new way and learning, okay, this is what people need: autonomy, mastery, purpose to be motivated. I'm going to add in 3 more things that come out of, there was an article I read in Harvard Business Review, The Science of Pep Talks, and they studied the writers. It's called motivation language theory, and how do you through language motivate people? And they gave an example of a vice president, I think, of sales at Yelp, and she did a terrific job in motivating employees, the salespeople. They had to hit this end of year goal. They were $1.5 million behind. And she did 3 things right. She, one, gave them the directions. That's a key thing, how to do it. So that's another thing. I have a patient, she's like on her own trying to figure it out, and she didn't even know who her boss is in her job. You have to give clear directions on how you're going to reach your year-end goals. She did that. And then she was empathic. She used empathic language. Like, I know this is really hard, and you got to make 70 calls in a short period of time, cold calls. And, we're going to get behind you, and we see you. We know you're working hard, but I know you can do it. So she uses this understanding language. And then the third is back to those other 3 parts, is it's meaning making language, or it has to have meaning. So she showed them that what you're doing, or she told them actually, is really important for the business, but you're helping businesses grow by bringing customers to the business, and you're helping customers find business. So she showed them and talked about how important what they do matters to the company and the world at large. So those 3 things, if you can do that regularly, give those rousing pep talks, maybe you implement that as part of your motivation plus empathy ecosystem into your company that recognizes what people have, let's say now more than ever. I can't tell you, Roger, how many people now, they are beating themselves up for, why they're not more successful or why they're having a hard time, as if the pandemic didn't have, like, we should be over it. It's just really, people have real post-traumatic stress, even on micro levels, that they don't, it sounds like a strong word, but it's not. We're in a new landscape. And if business owners think they can keep doing the same thing by being dictatorial, then, and getting different results, then that's the definition of insanity, right? They have to do something new.
Yep.
Right. They have to be open to doing something new.
Well, and that's where it starts. They have to be open to making some changes. And as I've said 100 times on my podcast, the only person in this world that likes change is a wet baby. And so it does take a lot of discipline to do that. Diana, this has far surpassed my what I wanted to share with the audience. So thank you very much. You're such a great speaker, great motivation behind every word you said, great passion behind everything you said. And I just can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise and your wisdom to me and my audience. I get a chance to talk to you every week, so I get to hear it each and every week, which is a joy to me. But now we got it recorded so we can share it with the world. So thank you. Now, Diana, I know there's going to be people that are going to want to reach out to you to learn more about you and your services. So how can they reach out to you?
Thanks, Roger. They can either find me on Instagram at Diana Zelvin, and Zelvin rhymes with Melvin, but with a Z. Or Kelvin with a Z. So it's Diana Zelvin. I'm the only Diana Zelvin in the world. My website is dianazelvin.com. You can connect me there, or you can email me at Diana. You can email me diana@dianazelvin.com. And yeah, I'm going to be doing, Roger, I'm kind of excited. I'm going to be doing a free training in mid-September on how leaders can implement an empathy ecosystem and intrinsic motivation system to have happy employees and build their bottom line. So if people want to reach out and listen to that, I have the blueprint. And if they're interested in learning more, or they want to do some one-on-one coaching, they can find me on those places. And in Instagram, they can find me and sign up for a discovery call so we can talk about it. And if they're interested in my Thrive Now program for employees, if they feel like it's just a lot, they have so many employees that are struggling, we can talk about what that 6-8 week program is for the employees, where I can help the employees.
Well, I hope that everybody at least takes you up on those offers, because it's necessary, especially in today's world, business world, especially. Diana, thank you. And I hope this is not our last podcast together. Let's do many more.
Thanks, Roger. Definitely not.
Absolutely. My podcast wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for my sponsors and my great supporters. So let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca at Custom Bookkeeping and Accounting, delivering trustworthy bookkeeping services since 2003. Dave and Dara at Virtues Matter, making this world a much happier place to be with their Virtues card app, coaching and workshops. Stephen at Buller Accounting, giving business owners depth and insight to their numbers. Eric and his team at Ivy Cat Web Design, the real superheroes of web development and design. Jennifer and Jean at the Seavers Real Estate Team, serving Pierce and Kitsap counties with their home buying and selling needs. Maury at the Maury Method, the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer, helping everyone have more clarity, less stress, and overall better brain health. Priya at Pivot My Profit, helping individuals and businesses have better control of their finances and more money at the end of their day. Melissa at the Soul Vibe Energy High, the queen of the aha moments, helping individuals find those holes in their cups, repair the hole, and gain back their positive energy. And finally, Rick at West Sound Recording. You talk, they do all the rest. Thank you, Rick, for all your efforts with the production and editing of my podcast.